The reports into Nick Reed and Henry Staunton's spat or confusion or squabble or whatever they're trying to do together, I don't know. It's so confusing. And in the end, you're sort of left in a sort of Alan Bates position where Alan Bates says, all of this is irrelevant. It's a distraction from the real issue, which is that the government should be paying out to the people, the real victims. Henry Staunton is presenting himself as a victim who was targeted and vilified by Kemi Badenoch. And now it turns out Nick Reed was being investigated. He's the chief executive. And Henry Staunton was trying to get his pay increased. His pay, which stood at over £400,000 a year. And then there were bonuses, which last year I think took him up to £816,000, of which he paid £54,000 back because of the post office official inquiry and the mess which has been created under his leadership. And apparently in the year 2020 to 2021, he didn't get a bonus and was only paid £415,000. And the argument is FTSE 100 bosses tend to get £3.81 million per year. Well, that presumably is if the company that they're representing, if the company that they're managing is working. The Post Office Limited is far from working. It's a wreck. It's hurting people. It's not just not working. It is hurting people, and that's the issue. And it doesn't matter whether, Mr. Reed or Mr. Staunton is more in the right. The whole thing comes across as two nasties fighting while somebody else looks on. Do you remember that wonderful scene in A Million Years BC with Raquel Welch? And I think the Tyrannosaurus Rex was fighting a Stegosaurus, much like the fight which took place in Fantasia. I don't think there was ever a fight in Jurassic Park between the Tyrannosaurus Rexes and the Stegosaurs, but it would have been very good. And in A Million Years BC, the human figures are hiding behind a stone as these giant dinosaurs bash it out. And that's what Nick Reed and Henry Staunton are. Two giant dinosaurs bashing it out while the poor little victims watch on, and they've got nowhere to hide. They're stuck behind a stone. And I think that sums everything up rather well. Sorry for the elaborate metaphor. But now, what should be happening now is there should be compensation. Hollingreich needs to get his finger out. And Liam Brine, who chairs the committee, needs to stop opining about chaos and actually make sure that something happens. It's now time to write a report and get this thing moving. Because if the post office victims are paid, then that sets a precedent for paying the victims of the blood scandal. It sets a precedent for sorting out Windrush. It sets a precedent for paying people who have been unfairly held in prison and are now released. A precedent for all of that. And actually the precedent is already there. It's called good sense. It's called justice. It's called the right thing to do. But I'm afraid this government needs a jolly good kick in the pants. And while we're in that area of the anatomy, let's just make it quite clear. Nick Reed and Henry Staunton come across as utter shits. And aided and abetted by Kemi Badenoch. I don't know how you can aid or abet a shit. I suppose you wipe them up. Wiped up by Kemi Badenoch. It's a gruesome image. Gruesome image. And there's only one place to put all three of them. And that's the loo and flush and go. Flush and go. And before you go, make sure you pay.